What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Think Big podcast, episode 115. You read the title correctly. We're going over the best sales processes to close more deals. I'm Marlon Johnson. I'm hanging out here with my amazingly handsome co-host Sam Singh, and he's got the dungeon vibes going on. What you guys need to know is when Sam's not on camera, it gets kind of wild inside that room. Is like that's what he's letting you know with all that powerful red and pink energy behind him. Just playing around. We like to have a good time here, but I'm excited for tonight's episode because really we're diving into one of the pillars of entrepreneurship, the pillars of business. You hear people talk about it all the time, and it's true that sales is the lifeblood of a business. Sales cure all. In fact, I remember when I was first getting into wholesaling, we would joke around as we were sitting in the boiler room, if you will, and we would say, like, coffees for closers. We would just have these little sayings that kept us geared up and wild up, because at the end of the day, if you're not producing revenue, if your business isn't producing profit, if it's not making money, it's not going to stay in business long. That's just the truth. And so whether you need to hype yourself up or you need to come to the Think Big and listen tonight, you need to understand sales is going to be a critical part of keeping your business machine running. And it's something that you want to dial in effectively, because there's a lot of different processes out there, a lot of different strategies and approaches to sales. And some of them work, some of them used to work, some of them never worked. And it's hard to know which one is which, because I think, Sam, you would agree that sometimes the people pushing that particular sales process and they're coaching it worked for their day and age, and it worked for their season and their career, but now they're 20 years out of the game, and that approach just doesn't work with the marketplace anymore. Sales is a perishable skill, and it changes with the time. So I think we're going to be talking today about just some of the different strategies out there that are popular, and also going over some of the, I like to say, the don'ts, like the things you want to avoid, the things you want to not do. So, Sam, kind of talk to me, bring us in today.
Yeah, so probably one of the most common questions I get from newbies is give me a script, give me a process to follow. How do you close deals? And it always, the question always alludes to sales, right? Because they think that there is a magic framework or process that if you follow and you say these words this way every single time, you are going to get deals. You're going to,
Wait,
sell
that doesn't
product,
exist.
sell a service, or or even get deals, get homeowners to sign off on a purchase contract, then you can get your assignment fees. And so the interesting reality with sales is this, guys, and I used to think the same way too. Like when I just got started and I had no idea what I was doing, I thought it was like a magic script, and as long as I said the words that were on the script, I used to overthink this so much in the beginning. And I used to just, like, before I knew anything about anything, I thought there was a magic script, and the guys who were crushing it, it's not because they were good. It's just they had this script that if they followed it perfectly, sellers would say yes to, right? And the reality is that can't be the furthest thing from the truth. And it's funny because anyone who's ever DM'd me about sales or scripts, you all have been told one thing, and that is that I don't use scripts. I very loosely even adopt frameworks. And here's the key, guys. And Marlon mentioned this, right? It's not only that, there are gurus teaching sales that worked 20 years ago. Let's just pretend it worked for them, but it's in a different industry. Car sales, you cannot approach a distressed homeowner the same way that you do someone trying to buy a Mercedes, right? You can't approach in a sales capacity the exact same way you're trying to sell a high-ticket coaching program, right, for $20,000, or a mastermind for 30 grand, or a 2-day workshop for 3 grand. And versus a $97 product, or if you go to In-N-Out and you're getting a $10 meal. Sales is different across the board. Now, if you take like this 10,000 foot zoom out, you'll actually find that sales frameworks and processes very often have a lot of similarities. They very, very often do. The reality is this: everyone out there, especially now more than ever, guys, I'm going to say this, and you may not have noticed this until I've said it, and I want you to pay attention to it, because now every single time it comes across your feed, you're going to be like, holy shit, Sam was right. There are more sales trainers than there have ever been in like history, thanks to the internet. Nothing wrong with that. And every single one of them promises that their unique sales process is the best thing. It's why they make millions, this, that, and the other. And here's the funny thing, and I'm gonna be very, very real with you guys here. And I've done this and I've seen this. When you go through a funnel, just so you guys know, if I am an influencer and I'm a sales trainer and I say I've got the best process ever and I've got a sales mentorship, which all of them will. Here's what's funny. The sales process I will teach you in the mentorship very often is not the sales process that you will go through when you click on my ad and talk to one of my reps. And that is a very interesting thing. And it's not that it's unethical, it's none of that. It's that very often, if they're selling a $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 product, they're going to have a very specific framework or a type that is in alignment with high ticket sales. Now, if my sales training is to teach you how to go sell a $97 product, you're going to realize that that framework is totally different than the one that I sold a $3,000 course for. And so I want everyone to be aware of this. I think a sales process is better than never having any type of process at all. I will say that. A process, no matter how rudimentary it is, will beat something that does not exist. And so, and a lot of times people think, sales has to be the most magical thing ever. And we look at some of the best closers, especially in our industry, and we're like, oh my God, there's something so unique about them. And if you look at guys like guys, and we'll save that towards the end when we talk about really dynamic sales. And that's what we're going to really enjoy. But here's what I want everyone to understand. You can pick up the phone, call a seller and say, hey, my name is Sam. I want to buy your home. And then you literally look at Zillow, Zestimate says 300,000, and I want to buy it for 150K, 50% of ARV, right? Or Zestimate or whatever. That sucks. But I guarantee if you do it 50,000 freaking times, you're going to make a lot of money. And it's so cool. And it's so shocking to me. I have friends and mentors who I've come up with over the last 3 years who make way more money than I do in real estate, and they make way more money in wholesaling than I do or ever would want to. And I am constantly shocked at how basic their sales processes are. And over the frameworks that we're going to showcase today, you're going to see why the best players in the game, right? There's like levels to it. In the beginning, you just follow the script because you have no idea what you're doing. When you get a little bit intermediate, you get better at that script and you kind of start riffing on it a little bit and then going off on your own. When you get really decent as a closer, you learn to be dynamic, and we'll go over dynamic sales towards the end. But here's the key. When you start building a business and you have a sales team and you want to delegate the process so you're not doing it, you know what's really hard to do is recreate and repeat talent. Because talent is innate. So when we see these teams get really, really, really big, we actually find that the sales process, regardless of the industry you're in, actually becomes more and more simplified because it's easier to impart on a team of people and delegate. So I'm going to shut up with this. I'm going to screen share and let's start going over some sales processes, man. Marley, you want to add anything before I start screen sharing here?
No, while you're sharing the screen, I love this where Sam's going with it. And by the way, guys, I'm gonna be the first to say, it's funny. I was thinking about this as we were coming onto the show, knowing that this is what the episode's about, and I was reflecting on myself as a salesperson, and I'm just like, I actually don't even think I'm a great salesperson by comparison to some of the sales ninjas I've been fortunate to meet. Also, I love seeing two Sams right now on the screen, but I've met some people, and the reason I say this, right, and this is not me saying I don't close deals. We get deals closed. However, I've met some sales ninjas out there where they can figuratively sell ice to an Eskimo. Like I've just met some of these guys, and I'm like, wow, these are some sales assassins. And they don't care what they sell. The reason I say I don't think I'm the best salesperson is because if I don't think a product is a good fit for something, like I have this moral compass I can't get rid of, it seems like. And I've watched people sell products because of how amazing they are and how talented they are. They've sold crappy products. I've watched people sell terrible products. So the things we're going to talk about tonight can be used for good, and it could also be used for bad. And I want to just make sure that you all here have a good, strong moral compass with what we're going to be going over, because sales, in my opinion, is service. It can be used to manipulate. There's a reason people think of slimy salespeople. They think of used car salesmen. It's because a lot of people have gone out and abused what we're going to be talking about tonight. I want you guys to use this for good. Think of Spider-Man and Uncle Ben. With great power comes great responsibility.
Do you guys see the screen or no?
No, we don't.
I am so annoyed. Give me 1 second.
Yo, Ivan, what's up, bro? Ivan said he's locked in. Haven't seen you since last year, bro. Good to see you.
Ivan has been awesome. I talk to Ivan all the time. See, it popped up and then it disappeared, huh?
Yeah, it's coming up and then dropping back down. No worries. While you're bringing that up, also, guys, if you're on Instagram, do me a favor, comment the word YouTube. Bring it on over to the YouTube channel. If you're looking at it on Instagram, that screen is going to be tiny. When we do a screen share, you will not be able to zoom in. So come over to YouTube. That's where the conversation is happening. What's up, Chris Dickerson? Yes, the boys are back in town. 2020. Is this our first episode of 2025? Is this the actual first episode of the new year?
It is. It is.
It is.
Last
Yo,
week was
first
the
episode of
31st.
2025. Let's go. All right. Yeah, I'm excited about this though. And let me explain something. Sam mentioned in the very beginning when a person's getting started and they're using scripts. If you guys have nothing else, use a script, but understand when we say we don't use scripts, it's because we've internalized them. And we'll talk more about this. Hopefully, when Sam gets these slides up, you guys are going to hear me say that what I like to do is I like to understand what is the intention behind the script. What is the intention of the script? What is the script trying to get me to do? That's where you're going to start to unlock the power of sales. And so if we can't get it up, I think we'll just have to, but I want to be able to give them visuals. It's all good if we can't give them visuals though.
I do. It's just not, I don't know why it's not doing it. It's so annoying.
We got
Okay.
technical difficulties, y'all.
Yeah, it's fine. So what I'm going to do is I will be able to screen share I think the entire screen, then it'll work. But okay, let's do this. I'm going to screen share the entire screen and then we should be able to be fine. But I'm not going to be able to see a damn thing when we do this.
Brian Sub2 says log out and back in, Sam. He said restart your computer. I think he
I
works.
gotta put it in rice.
That's the Dell solution. If you guys ever had a broken computer and you called Dell back in the day, that was always their first solution. Have you tried turning it off and turning it back on?
Okay, whatever. I'm just gonna share a screen. I'm not gonna be able to see anything. That's fine. I just share the entire screen, which is gonna be an inception moment for a bit.
Let's see. Oh yeah, that is the entire screen. Can you go full? Oh, you would have to go full screen with it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go full screen with this. So give me a sec. You guys see this? I can't see anything, so just let me know.
Perfect.
Beautiful.
Yeah, Chris says, is it plugged in?
I mean, honestly, I might have to put it in rice later, just a bucket of rice. Okay, guys. So 100%. One of the most common things that I get asked all the time is sales processes. And very often when someone comes to me and says, hey, Sam, can I have a script? My immediate answer is we don't use scripts and we never have. I hate scripts. I think they're stupid. And I think that the over-reliance on scripts is the reason why people don't develop their sales skill sets. And so I don't believe in scripts. I do believe in processes and loose frameworks. And so if you actually look at a sales process or a sales framework, we're going to go over 3 of them today that are the really big ones that I want you guys to pay attention to. And they all work. All 3 are phenomenal. Here's the thing. You'll notice that every sales process, when you take a 10,000-foot step back, you'll realize that each section accomplishes something. And so it's not the individual verbatim words that matter, really very often not. It's the intention behind a section. So if I look at a script and there's 5 sections, right? And there's like 5 paragraphs of scripting, what you don't realize when you're new, you will realize this later on. When you take this big, massive step back, you're going to find out that the beginning was all about setting expectations very often and building rapport or trust, right? And then you go into the next section, and the next section has an intention. And so you'll find that the best sales processes all very loosely follow the same overall framework. And I care about you guys doing that. We're going to start with the one that Marlon and I were both trained on heavily in the real estate space because we're phenomenal closers overall, especially when it comes down to getting homeowners to sell us their properties. And this is, in my opinion, for a real estate wholesale acquisitions kind of process, I think this is a phenomenal one to follow. And we're going to go over the almighty Adam Sandler submarine, not actually associated with Adam Sandler. Okay, Marlon, you let me know. Do I need to zoom in on this submarine? Because I want you to be able to cover this because you've taught this a lot.
I have taught this a lot. I've used this a lot. And this was the first sales I would say, framework and process that I really adopted and took to. So it's good. I can see it from here. And if you
Cool.
guys aren't familiar with the Sandler submarine, there's a book I highly recommend you all picking up and reading that breaks this methodology down into its most minute detail. It's called You Can't Teach a Kid to Ride a Bike at a Seminar. And so this technique, if you look at these submarines, I want to explain the photo of the submarine before we start to go through the compartments. Each of these positions in the submarine, you're going to see rapport, you're going to see upfront contract, pain, budget, decision, fulfillment, and post sale. These represent the different areas inside of a submarine. And the idea is when a submarine goes underneath and it goes underwater, each compartment of the submarine must perfectly be sealed before you go into the next compartment, or else if one section is broken, the pressure in one section can actually take down and sink the entire ship. And so submarines compartmentalize themselves and they make sure that each section is secure. When we're talking about sales, it's the same thing. As we're going through a process with a seller, as we're taking them on what I like to call the seller's journey, we want to make sure that we are sealing and closing up each section before we move into the next. Sometimes people get a little excited, they get a little above themselves, and they try to go for the close too soon, or they start talking numbers before they've established a relationship. So we're going to discuss each of these, and they matter the order in which you go in. So the first thing, when I'm sitting or I'm on the phone, because most of us, we're talking wholesale, we're doing real estate, we're operating on the phone. So whenever I'm face to face with these people, when we pick up the phone, the first thing we need to do is we need to build rapport. We have to create a bond with the seller. Now, when people go to do this, here's the number one mistake I think most new individuals make. And Sam, you tell me if you agree with this. They think building rapport and building bond is all about when the seller says, hey, I have a dog at home. Oh my God, I have a dog at home. I love dogs. Hey, I have a 2-year-old. I've got 3 2-year-olds. We like watching baseball. Baseball's my favorite sport. And it's whatever that person says, you feel like you need to say you love that thing as well. That's not necessarily building rapport. I had a great mentor who said the best way to build rapport is to show up credible and ready to solve their problem. Says you want to build rapport, just show up as a professional ready to solve their problem. Because at the end of the day, they don't necessarily want a new friend. They want to know that the person they're on the phone with is there to solve the problem. So when you get on the phone, something I like to do when I'm talking to them immediately, I will get onto a phone call. It doesn't matter who the person is. It doesn't matter if I never talked to them a day in my life. I'll immediately start that conversation off by saying, hey, Mr. Seller, it's Marlon. How are you doing today? Right? And I'll ask them. I always love asking a yes question. Can you hear me? They'll say, huh? Yeah, I can hear you. Awesome. Now we're talking. And I will jump right into it. So I know a lot of people, Sam, they're going after pre-foreclosure. And so the way I'm going to build rapport with this individual is I'm going to say, hey, listen, I saw that the bank's giving you problems with the bank's been giving you a hassle with your house on 123 Main Street. Has anyone reached out to you to offer you solutions? Right? Like that's my rapport, guys. It's actually not what color is your house? What color is your dog? It's, I know you have a problem. Has anyone helped out to offer you solutions? Has anyone reached out to give you help, to support you yet? You're going to find that when people are in pain, they are open to having solutions brought to them. So I'm building rapport with the seller. And when the person on the other line opens themselves up to say, yes, I want to talk to you. Yes, I need some help. Yes, there is a problem. Cool. We can move forward into the upfront contract. Upfront contracts, upfront agreements. These are little micro agreements. These are when you start to let them know what they can expect on the rest of the phone call, and you ask for permission. You ask for permission to dig deeper. You let them know things like, okay, well, listen, this is what you can expect on this call today. We're going to look, I want to understand a little bit more about your situation. So I'm going to ask you some questions about your situation, about the property, about how we got here. And during this time, I'm gathering information because I have a lot of tools available to help. I just don't know yet which tool to bring out for the job. And so as we go forward, do me a favor. If I start to ask you questions that start to bother you, would you mind letting me know? because I want to be sensitive to your situation. And at the same time, if you feel at any point in time we're not a good fit to work together, can you do me the courtesy of just letting me know? Yeah. And listen, Mr. Seller, if by the end of this phone call you decide that you and I are not a good fit to work together, would you also have the decency of letting me know that? Because I often talk to people where at the end of a phone call, they are wanting to be polite. They want to say, they don't want to hurt my feelings. And they'll say, sure, I'll give you a call back later. And listen, I don't need you to be polite. You don't have to worry about my feelings. It's okay. I just want to make sure I can serve you. When you give people this upfront agreement and you're ultimately what you're doing is you're giving them a way out of the conversation. You're actually showing them, hey, by the way, the escape hatch is over there. It eases the tension. Most people see the reality is you think they don't know. You think that the person on the other phone doesn't know you're trying to sell them. We are all adults. We've all been sold something in our lives. We all know what it's like to sit at a sales table, to be on a sales call. We know what's going on. Don't insult their intelligence. So upfront contracts, I like to say an upfront contract is really pointing out the elephant in the room. It's addressing the elephant in the room. And so I'm
Marlon,
going
can
to
I want to hit on this really quickly for people. Really quickly, guys, upfront contracts. So I audit sales processes and sales calls and all the things for the businesses that I have. And here's a fun fact. You guys want to know the number one way to mitigate or limit people ghosting you, sellers, prospects, someone that you're trying to sell something to. If you're like having a conversation, you go through the first call and then they ghost you and they say, yeah, let's do it. Let's do business 100%. Send me the link, do whatever, right? Send me the contract. And then they ghost you. 99.9% of the time, it's because in your setting expectations portion, you didn't give them what Marlon said. Marlon kind of glanced over it a little bit. I want to really drive this home. You didn't give them permission to say no. And so when people don't feel they have permission to say no, they have one out. And that out is to ignore you. Because when they see your name, when they see the phone, when they see the text message, when they see the phone number ring, they get that little bit of anxiety inside, that conflict and that confrontation. And you guys know this, whenever you feel conflict, what do you want to do? You want to shy away. You want to not answer the phone. You not want to open the door. And so if you have a problem with people ghosting you, right? The solution to that is not in any other portion of the submarine or any other sales process. It's actually in properly setting expectations and giving people permission to say no, and in fact, encouraging it. When you give them the freedom to say that, they will communicate with you so much more openly. And by the way, when you get into the bigger things like the decision-making process, right? And you start handling objections, how comfortable you made them feel in the beginning will dictate how open and real they are with you about the objections they actually have. So upfront contract like truly sets the pace for the rest of the call. Okay, Marlon, I'm sorry. I had to.
No, you know, I appreciate you jumping in on that, because here's something else. I do a lot of in-person sales nowadays, right? Like I'm not on the phone as often. And something that, even though when I am on the phone, my body language is the same both on the phone and off the phone, which is during this upfront contract, when I am alleviating pressure, when I'm doing a slight pull away, I am physically actually leaning back. So when I'm at home and I'm on the chair, I am physically leaning back into my chair. I am physically taking my presence. I'm taking my energy back, and I'm letting them know, like, what I'm saying with this upfront agreement is, hey, really, at the end of the day, I'm happy if you and I get a deal done together. And if you and I don't do a deal together, I'm also happy. I'm good either way. You want to make sure that pressure during this compartment, it's not also just about the seller. It's about you as the salesperson. All right, let's move into the next compartment, because this compartment is, I would argue, one of the most valuable compartments to be in. It's talking about the pain. This is the actual problem that your prospect has. This is the actual problem that the homeowner has. And now, when we're talking about the pain, it's not your diagnosis of the pain. It's the way they identify the pain. See, it's important here that in this compartment, it's not you telling them their problem. It's them telling you their problem in their words. because that's what you're doing here. You're listening for the language that they use to describe their own problem, because that, my friends, is going to be the pitch. In sales, there's a saying that the pain is the pitch. And you don't know how yet to communicate the pitch because you haven't yet learned how they communicate their pain. And so when you understand how they communicate their pain in this section of the submarine, you're learning how to properly word your solution later on when it comes time to offer it to them. But you need to understand what problem you are solving for. And I can tell you right now, if you're not solving for a problem, you are not going to create a sale. There's nothing to be done. There's no transaction to be had because the problem introduces the opportunity for an exchange of value. Whether it's you are taking away pain or you are moving them towards pleasure, either instance is a problem. They are in pain right now and they want to get out of it, or there's somewhere they want to be and they want to get to it. But if that pain does not exist, or if that pain is not hurting them enough, a sale will not occur. If you cannot identify that pain because it is either A, not there, or because you did a terrible job at trying to diagnose it, even if the pain exists, this is interesting. Even if the pain exists, if you do a terrible job at uncovering it, they will not allow you to serve them. And the best way I like to think about this is imagine you are a doctor and the patient walks into your office and you're this know-it-all doctor. You just know everything. And the moment the patient walks in, you immediately you write a prescription, hand it to them and tell them to go take it. How much trust do you think they're going to have in that prescription? This is what a lot of you are doing because you downloaded data from a data provider. You pulled a list off a prop stream and you said, but Marlon, I know they're in pre-foreclosure. They're just too ignorant to understand that I have the solution. I can solve the problem with subject to or with creative finance, and you are just a doctor throwing pills at patients. Instead, you have to be patient. You need to ask them and find out. And when you tell your doctor more and more and more about your situation, about the pain you feel, about the fact that it kind of hurts a little bit when you turn to the right, and he's like, okay, and what about this? And what about that? And he continues to dive deeper and discover. How much more confident do you feel in the diagnosis he gives after the fact? You are the house doctor. I need you to act like it. Be a good house doctor. Sam, anything you want to add in on pain?
Pain is the most important time. I mean, it's all important, but pain is the most important time to be actively listening. And so a lot of the times when people go through the pain process, there's a portion of pain where when they're giving it to you, you want to shut the heck up and listen. But you also, as soon as they are done talking, or there is a moment where you can intervene or interject, the whole point is you go deeper. And so people very often will give you a level of pain that is almost surface level. And it is up to you to really kind of find the implications of surface level distress. And so if there is someone says, hey, one of my pain points is, I just need the money for something, right? I need the money, from the sale of my property, right? Cool. A good salesman or a good closer is going to dig deep and find out, whatever we can come and decide on, right? The money that you do get from the sale of this property, like, do you have an idea what you're going to spend on it? And what's going to end up happening is you're going to dig and find other pain points. And very often surface pain, right, is just the Band-Aid stuff. And very often when they're trying to sell a property and they're having a legitimate discussion with you, there's a lot more happening below the surface. I mean, like, this is all very, very fortuitous that it's a submarine analogy here, but you want to go deeper in the pain section very often, because as soon as you can get them to start opening up about the non-surface level stuff is the second that your rapport, by the way, goes exponentially higher. When someone feels safe enough with you and comfortable enough with you to start expressing the real shit they're going through, the level of trust between you and that person goes even higher. And this is where empathy and compassion come 100% will set you apart from your competition, because the competition will treat this like a checkbox. Pain, they need the money because they want to use it for something. Cool. Move on to the next thing, right? Versus if you dig in the pain and you spend 20 minutes talking to them about it and you realize they have medical problems, you realize that walking is debilitating for them because they have a lower back injury, and then you really kind of find other unique ways to resonate with it, whether you've had family members who've been through something similar. And this is where resonance really comes in. By the time you're off of or out of this section or off the call, the level of trust and resonance that you have with that seller or that prospect is going to be so much higher than the rest of your competition. So this is the point where I say actively listen. Don't just take notes and just to take notes. Don't just listen and just kind of sit there and just hear it and write it down and move on. Spend the time here. Because to Marlon's point, the pain is the pitch. The pain is when you have the best chance of that person like telling you exactly how to close them, but you will not get it if you don't go deeper. So that's what I want to add there.
I love that. And so guys, we're gonna hang out in this pain section a little bit longer too, because I want to emphasize just by length of time how important this section is. And I want to share some insight that you may have never thought about. The reality is when I'm talking to a person and they're telling me about their problem, it's emotional. If they are purely logical when they're explaining their problems to you, you haven't gone deep enough. I like to see, and this is going to sound a little strange, I like to hear the emotion in their voice. I like to see the tears in their eyes, the water behind it, because now I know, okay, we're on to something real. And this is the thing that people don't think about. When you spend your time here with the seller or with the prospect, the reality is after they unload this burden they've been carrying, this secret they've been holding on to, they don't want to do that with another stranger again. This is an intimate exchange. And so now when the next person calls, you got to realize they don't want to spend 30 minutes telling the next stranger who calls their entire life story. They're now locked in with you. Like, guys, this is a subtle, unspoken contract that happens when you get them to really open up about what matters to them, because it's an intimate moment. They are sharing a vulnerability with you. That is not something that you should be taking lightly. You need to understand that portion of pain. People make selling decisions emotionally and they justify it with logic after the fact. It is an emotional process. Okay, let's move into the budget section, because this is something we also need to consider, especially inside of wholesale. Quite frankly, in all things. In wholesale, it seems a little bit different though, because normally when we're talking about the budget, we're talking about, does the individual have the ability to purchase my product or service? Do they actually have the means? Do they have the financial capability, whether it's the cash on hand, the access to credit? Do they have the purchasing power to actually become a client or a customer? Now, when we're talking about wholesaling, it's in the same vein, which is, do they have the ability to transact and do a deal? Is there enough equity in the deal? Is there enough time on the deal? Is there enough potential upside in the property? In my opinion, the budget section, it's going to be something that we discover with them beforehand. However, if you're doing your homework properly in your lead generation and marketing, and that's something that Samsung has taught you guys how to do at an extremely high level, you should be marketing to people that the answer to the budget question is always yes, they have the ability and means to transact. If you're talking to people who don't have the ability to transact, I'm going to say that is a major, major issue and a major flaw in your marketing process. And that ought to be fixed as soon as humanly possible, or else you are going to be burning out all of your business's life force and business's energy. So let's imagine that this person does in fact have the financial capability, in the sense that this is wholesale. They have equity in their deal. There's a way to make a transaction happen. What we need to do is we need to uncover the money conversation with them, which is asking a homeowner. I personally love cash deals. I'm a big cash guy over creative. If you're in the wholesale business, just larger assignments. And so we're talking cash conversation. And what I need to find out from that person is, well, what price did you have in mind? See, I don't want to just immediately throw out my number. I don't want to, I never, ever, ever, ever want to give my number first if I can help it. There will be times where I will have to use a number to anchor, and we'll talk about that here in a moment. However, to the best of my ability, I want to hear them tell me what they already have on their mind first, because here's the reality. The number that they throw out, If they're already in my ballpark, amazing. If their number is outrageous, what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to break that number down without necessarily having to attack it with my own number by questioning their number and causing them to question it themselves. Mr. Seller, how much do you want for your house? Well, I got to take at least $500,000. $500,000. And then I shut up. Why? I'm going to remain silent because I want him to feel the weight of the number he just put out there. And I want him to feel the weight of decision that he's now put on me. I want him to think back because it's such an interesting thing. Sam, I'm sure you've seen this plenty of times that when you repeat their number back to them and you just say, or you say, huh, and then you leave dead space. I'm talking utter silence. In fact, I mute my phone. I make it that silent. And they start to, I've had so many times where sellers will negotiate with themselves right there on the spot. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking to see them negotiate with themselves on the spot because it shows me that their number is negotiable and they don't even necessarily understand the reason they have that number. It just gives me more insight and more negotiating power. Sam, you want to add anything to this piece?
100%. This is it's very Chris Voss with this, and from the industry that I used to work in, silence is very powerful. And it's like one of the biggest things when we talked about or when we were trained on how to talk to people and get information out of people. And the number one tactic was literally just shut the hell up. And because humans socially have this natural anxiety when it comes down to being in silence, whenever we're in communication with another human being and we're getting silence from the other party, we don't like to let silence sit. It's uncomfortable. So what do? We fill it. And so if I'm a seller and Marlon goes ahead and says, wait, 500 for the house for 123 Main Street, that one, 500? And then Marlon just shuts up. It's going to be awkward as hell for 5 seconds. And what's almost always going to happen, and this is how you know you're going to win the negotiation very quickly, is sellers will start trying to rationalize and justify their price point. And then they almost always do it by giving you more information that you didn't have before that you could also use against them. Well, yeah, I mean, I fixed the kitchen and this, that, and the other. And like the kitchen, cool. What did you do with the kitchen? What was wrong with the kitchen? And then you find out they DIY'd the cabinets and this, that, and the other. None of it was permitted, so it's not worth anything. And you actually get more leverage when they start filling in the blanks for you. And this is the biggest thing that I was taught, is that the person who starts word vomiting first will always lose the negotiation. Always. So I'm huge with that, dude. Be very, very comfortable with this. And I'm gonna use this person as an example. One of the original hosts, our good friend Daryl. Daryl used to do live calls, like live seller calls. And it was funny. He did this live seller call once where the seller said something ridiculous. And then Daryl wanted to make a point out of it. And he literally on the call took his phone, put it down, and then like live on camera and walked away and started like playing with his dog. And then you know what happened? 10 seconds of silence. Seller started just word vomiting. 5 minutes later, Daryl comes back and the seller is still word vomiting to no one on the phone. And so it's amazing how powerful just letting silence sit can be. And so 100%, but that's all I wanted to add there.
Yeah, I love that. And guys, if you don't think people freak out when silence happens on the phone, do this. I want you guys to later tonight after the show, call your mom and then say nothing. Watch her freak out, right? Like it is, silence on a phone call is the strangest thing. You're going to train yourself to be able to be silent there. So one more thing with the budget now is when they do give you a number, and let's say they are in your ballpark, what the biggest mistake I see people do is, because once we start talking about money, let's be honest, most people, you get clammy, your hands get clammy, your butt cheeks literally squeeze together. Like it's an uncomfortable conversation for most people. And so when they do say a number, and let's say the seller says, look, I could sell it for 180,000. And you're like, oh my gosh, 180,000. Like that's that's right in my ballpark. Like I literally, that's my MOA is 180. Like I should just take it. Like, let me just, yeah. Like you want to jump on it and scream, yes. Whoa, slow it down, cowboy. You're going to get some. Chill. What you want to do is you want to figure out why does that number work? Right? Like we don't want to be too easy, too eager. And so with that budget, it's like finding out from the seller, it's like, all right, you're looking for 180. Oh man, okay. 100. I mean, like Mr. Seller, the 180, I mean, that's a lot, but I mean, what would that do for you? I mean, does that solve your problems? What is it that you're planning on doing with this money anyway? And I want to understand, why is 180 the number? Why does 180 work? Because you might find out that he's like, well, there's a $90,000 I want to pay off. And then there's some land I want to go and buy. And that's going to cost me $30,000. And then I just want the rest for retirement, which means he doesn't actually need 180. 180 is just a really nice number. So again, by understanding what the number means, why he's coming up with that number, why she's coming up with that number, I'm in a better position to negotiate if necessary, or to be able to make my offer that much more enticing if we do go about saying 180. Because when I offer that number, I'm able to explain it is literally solving all their problems because I was actively listening. So from here, we go into the next bucket. And this one it's cool because I can't help but think about the decision-making bucket with Chris Voss in mind, because Chris Voss and the Black Swan, it's so ingrained in my mind. I can't differentiate when I get into this bucket. And so the decision-making is ultimately, you want to find out from your prospect, what does their decision-making process look like? And that's actually word for word the question I personally like to use, because I liked that wording. It just feels right for me. You guys might use different words, but I like to ask a seller or a prospect at a sales conversation. I like to ask them, hey, so what's your decision-making process look like for making important decisions? That is genuinely the question I ask. Like, that is it. And then I shut up. And what's so interesting is, in the beginning of asking that question, Sam, I used to think people were going to ask me, well, what do you mean? But what I've discovered is people all hear whatever they want to hear, and they all answer it in the right vein. They all start to tell me, well, for a big decision like this, I got to talk it over with my wife, or big decisions like this, I operate off my gut. And in the few instances when they ask me, well, what do you mean by that? I say, well, this is a pretty big decision that you're about to make. Is there anybody that you need to talk to first? Is there, like, what's your process for making a decision? How do you know if you've made the right decision? Again, Sam and I mentioned earlier during the upfront contract, in that area, we were allowing the seller to have an easy exit. When I'm asking them, how do you know you're making the right decision? What's going on in their mind? They're thinking, whoa, this guy is giving me permission to back out. This guy is asking me he cares about my well-being after the transaction is over. He cares about my well-being before the transaction's even finished. This is an important question, because here you're going to discover how they think and how they make decisions. So you're going to find out if there's something more you need to give, in whether it's information, whether it's time, like no matter what, maybe you're talking to an analytical person and it's like, okay, they need to see some data. And then also, here's what I'm really looking for. I'm looking for, are there other decision makers? That's the biggest one. I want to find out if there are other decision makers. Now, typically, I actually like to do this 2 times. I like to do it at the front of the conversation and then again at this decision-making conversation, where at the very beginning of the conversation, I also like to ask them, hey, by the way, is there anybody else that we need to get on the phone? I just want to make sure I'm not stepping on anybody else's toes. Like, does anyone, in the case of a house, does anybody else, is anyone else on deed, or is anyone else a part of this decision-making process? I will ask that at the very beginning of the call, so that when they say no, and later when I come back and I reaffirm that, they don't come and hit you. One of the easiest excuses for not transacting, for not buying, is I need to go talk to my wife. I need to go talk to my husband. I need to go talk to my family. I need to go talk to my brothers and sisters. It's one of the easiest excuses. And quite frankly, it's one of the, if you didn't address it properly, it's very hard to not come off as pushy or like a jerk when you tell them, well, what do you need to talk to your wife for? You can never, you're not allowed to say that. There's never a good time to say something like, well, what do you need to talk to your brother for, in an attitude way, like, no, transact now. So you need to get it out of the way before it's an issue. Sam, anything you want to add on to decision making?
I want to highlight something about the types of questions that we ask, especially leading up to the decision making process. Because when time comes to go for the pitch or the close, whatever it is, right? When time comes to get there, you want to control all of the cards, and that's really it. And so when you say, freaking,
Dude,
Jonah's
I'm reading Jonah's comments,
Dude, I know.
and
It's like,
that
aren't
is
you the
funny.
man of the house? Says to the wife. Um, she's like, no, I'm the woman of the house, and Jonah's probably just gonna be there, like, well, can I talk to the man? Jonah's a savage, guys. So here's the key: when we start asking these questions, you have to be careful about asking them at the right time and before it's too late. Because if you ask it right before the pitch comes up, what happens if they say, no, my wife needs to be part of this conversation? My wife's at work right now. She's not going to be home till midnight because she's a nurse. Great. You are not going to be able to get them to make a decision right now at all. There's no way around it. I don't care what sales guru tells you that you can magically get around it. You can't. And if you do, you know what's going to happen in the post close? You're going to have bigger problems because they're going to try to cancel the contract and they're going to try to cancel the sale. They're going to get a refund or a dispute because not everyone was on board. And so when we ask questions, we want to make sure that we ask questions where we basically, and this is one of the biggest things when you look at law enforcement and how law enforcement does investigations, very often they will only ask questions that they already know the answer to. And that is a very, very important thing because it'll also help stipulate whether or not they're talking to an honest human being or a dishonest human being. And it becomes very easy to spot a dishonest human being a mile away. And so very often law enforcement, when it's interrogating a suspect or you're in the hiring process and they're going through your background checks, they will ask you questions, but they already know the answer. And so how they control that conversation all the way through, you need to make sure you do the same. And so when Marlon said, make sure that you ask about the other decision makers, honestly, as soon as possible. Because if you find out that their wife is the decision maker, great. Marlon, are you going to go for the close if the wife is another decision maker and she's not home and she's not available right now?
Absolutely not.
Hell no. You know what you're going to do? You're going to go back to the upfront contract section and you're going to set expectations for another call, for another follow-up. When we've had a chance to talk to the wife, when we can get on a three-way call with everybody involved so everyone feels included. And the companies that don't understand that and they're so hungry for the sale, they will kill themselves because they don't understand how to just let go of tension just a little bit. And they're the ones who double down and they tighten. And what happens, to Marlon's point, the second that you give someone friction when they've brought up their wife or their spouse or their sibling or their business partner, and even if it's a smoke screen or not, right? Whether it's a real smoke screen or not is irrelevant. The second that you introduce that friction there, you're going to start losing them, in my opinion.
No, you're absolutely right. And there's a great saying that my buddy Sam gave to me, not you, Sam, another Sam. He said to me, salespeople create the objections, right? The prospects never create objections. Salespeople create their own objections by either asking the wrong questions or failing to ask the right questions. We create our own objections. It's kind of like, I think about like movies. You ever watch a movie and at the very beginning, within the first 5 minutes, you're like, boom. And that's how the good guy just created the supervillain. We create our supervillains. And so, guys, the decision-making process, finding out who the decision makers are, is something that you want to do as early as humanly possible in that upfront contract, even in that pain section when you're listening, and pay attention to vocabulary. Sam said active listening. When you notice they keep saying we, but you've only been talking to one person, you need to figure out who's we, right? Or when they say us, you have to listen for that subtle language. Okay. Now, when it comes to in that decision, remember at the very beginning, I asked them if by the end of this call you think that we're a good fit to work together. Would you let me know? I'm in that area now where I can, if we're ready, if I have my numbers ready, I can start to present an offer if the conversation has been brought there, because I will say to them, essentially like, hey, it sounds like we would be a good fit based on what you told me and based on what we're able to do. It sounds like we'd be a good fit to work together. Do you see any reason why we wouldn't be? Right? Because again, I'm giving them that out, and by them saying no, I think we could be a good fit, they're confirming, yes, I want to work with you. Yes, I am open, because everything I'm doing now up until this moment, I'm building up the rapport, I'm finding out the pain, I'm setting the upfront contract, figuring out the numbers. All of this is so that I can go ahead and eventually make the offer. And here's what the reality of making an offer is. You are going to burn rapport. You are going to burn goodwill that you built with this person. So all that goodwill you were building up is now going to be used. This portion of it is going to be used. The reason I want to put it like this is because many of you are going to have the challenge I had in the very beginning, which is I was amazing at building rapport and connecting with these homeowners and connecting with these prospects. And then I had felt internally that I had done such a great job making a friend that now I don't want to do anything to ruin the friendship. Here's the reality. You are a professional. You are a salesperson. You are building this rapport and you are building this relationship so that it can be used. I've got to say it like that. I know that sounds harsh. However, I want the reality to slap you in the face a little. Because you think that you're helping them by just being nice to them. No, you're helping them by solving their problem and transacting. You are helping them by actually making a sale occur. Because the product, the service, the solution is actually the thing that's going to make their life better, not the relationship with you. The relationship with you is only to facilitate them moving forward with the service if it is discovered that it's a good fit. So, Sam, I think we're good on the decision-making part. Anything we want to add to it?
No, I think that's fantastic.
Beautiful. So here's this is the two parts that, quite frankly, most salespeople fumble the ball on, and for obvious reasons, we don't get a lot of motivation in these two sections. Just being for real. If you're a salesperson, these first couple of sections of the submarine are your favorite. They're the ones that give you the thrill. It's the thrill of the hunt. And now at the end of the decision, let's say they accept your offer. And in this case, we got an agreement signed, we got a contract signed, and we ship it off to escrow. And so now we got the fulfillment. This is the part where we have to now do all the things we promised would be done on that conversation. If I said I was going to help them move, if I said I was going to send somebody out to survey the land, if I said whatever it is I said I was going to do to make the deal happen, now I actually need to follow through. And what salespeople don't realize is just because a person signs a contract, it doesn't mean the deal is closed. If you start not following through on those little micro promises you were making because you were saying anything to get the deal, that deal can blow up before the closing occurs. So during the fulfillment phase, you want to make sure that you are reviewing your notes. You're going back, and not only are you fulfilling on the promises, but you are communicating actively with the seller on the process along the way. You're actually keeping the communication after the signing of the contract up until the close. You're keeping that line of communication open, and you're following up with them just like you were before you got the contract signed. Now, personally, you guys know Sam and I don't necessarily like doing that work ourselves, hence why we hire TCs. After my very first transaction, I said I will pay a TC whatever they want, because I never, ever, ever want to have to follow a deal to the closing table ever again, because I had zero, I'm talking like zero motivation. Even knowing I was going to get paid, there was just nothing in me that wanted to do that level of work. However, it is a necessary part of making sure the transaction goes all the way to the closing table. Sam, anything you want to add on the fulfillment side?
Yes, really quickly. Those two, the fulfillment and the post sell, they're going to be, I'll call it the post close. They are tried and true. When we go into, and the other two frameworks are going to kind of dive into this a little bit, which we're going to have to definitely do a part 2 for. The fulfillment and the post sell is how in non-real estate specific businesses. Okay, assume you have a product or a product or a service, right? You're lawn care, you're selling coaching, you have a restaurant, whatever it is, right? The fulfillment in the post sell is what determines if your customer will come back to you next week. And that's what everyone fails at. Everyone fails at. And so you guys know I'm really big on growing and scaling businesses. And I'm telling you right now, it is easier and way more effective and makes your business so much more valuable to keep a current client or a current customer than it is to go and get a new one. Okay. And the reason why is when you already have a customer, you've already spent the marketing dollars to get them, right? The customer's already been generated. Now, if you close them, do all the marketing, have a great offer, you go through the entire process, and then the decision-making process happens, they close on it, and they're like, yep, you know what? I'm good. Here's my credit card. And then you stop, and your fulfillment process isn't phenomenal. Your post-sell process isn't phenomenal. What's going to happen is once they're done with the product or the service, because everything has a timeline to it, right? Let's just say it's a meal, and they're done with the meal. Guys, what's going to determine next week if they come back is literally what happens after they get their food and the level of care and nurturing that the wait staff gives them. If you are a coach, right? Big thing in the coaching space. We're talking about coaches and gurus. And so if, they have this amazing offer, an amazing sales process, they find out they use this formula and they find out, your pain is that you can't close deals because you suck at talking to sellers. Awesome. They get you to the decision-making process. They talk to your wife. Woohoo. We know we're going to be able to help you out. Awesome. Swipe your card for 15 grand for my coaching program. And then you join the coaching program and it sucks. And you only got a fraction of all the things that I said it was going to be. You know what's going to happen? Eventually the customer is just going to not renew. They're going to kill their contract, right? They're going to terminate their agreement. They're going to pause their membership. They're not going to refer a friend. And let's just say they go through the 6 months because it's a 6-month coaching program. You know what's going to happen? They will not renew. And in the world of business, we call this client retention or revenue retention. And when it comes down to growing and scaling, and my big thing is scaling and selling businesses, this is like one of the biggest things you can work on. And to Marlon's point, it's not sexy. As closers and as people who focus on sales, we just want the close. We want the dopamine hit that we get from going to close and for them saying yes and swiping the credit card or signing the contract. Like that's where we get all of our dopamine hit. And eventually, when you get really good at this game, you don't care as much about that. You care about making sure that once they've said yes, they have the best time with you and your business as possible. And if that means that, you're like Marlon and me, where we don't like talking to sellers after we've closed them, so we hand it off to a TC, you got to make sure the TC does a really phenomenal job fulfilling on your behalf, doing the post-sell on your behalf. Because whether they do or do not, and a lot of times, people may be wondering, hey, Sam, I bought the home from the seller. They're not going to, they don't have another house. Why do I care about revenue retention? Why do I care about client retention? Guys, one of my favorite forms one of my best ways to get private money lenders is to go back to sellers we've closed. When we have a cash contract and then we lock up a deal and we give you $150,000 at close of escrow and I go and wholesale that deal for 20 grand, I know that seller has $150K in their pocket. And if I follow up with them in the next 3-4 months and ask, hey, hey, just checking up, it's me. What have you done with that $150K? It's just sitting there. And if I want to go buy property or I want to reinvest in my business and I need access to $150,000 freaking dollars, which is a lot of money, whether or not they give it to me is literally dependent on the rest of the process that happened after they signed. And so for anyone who's new to sales, especially in real estate, remember the signing of the paper, that's when it actually all starts, in my opinion. That's when the transaction just starts. You're nowhere near done yet. And so really focus on the fulfillment and the post-sell. It's going to pay off in dividends later, even if you're not buying property yet. Trust me, when you start buying property, that was exactly what happened to me. When I decided I want to start buying rentals and I needed private money, one of my mentors was like, dude, you've closed like 100 deals. Go talk to all of your sellers and see what they've done with the money. And some of my first private money lenders were actually my previous sellers. And they only lent that money to me because after they trusted me and signed on the dotted line, I performed and my company performed. And they had such a good experience with me that they are willing to go and then wire me $150K. So yeah, I need to hit on that.
Yeah, no, dude, I love that. In fact, I went and I grabbed this book because I got a book last year that I go through and I keep thumbing through this. It's called Customer Success Manifesto. And this is an entire book on just how to take care of your customers after they say yes. It is, and that's the emphasis, is how to take care of people after they put their trust in you. And so I want to emphasize this point because it's something that people don't think about. You don't talk about it. Nobody posts on Facebook. You only see the checks, you only see the signed contracts, but you don't see the care that you put into people after the fact. So that fulfillment process, actually delivering the product, make sure your service is there, and that post follow up. I mean, dude, Sam, you nailed the head on the hammer right there. The nail on the hammer. It really, it's something special, and it says something about your character and your business when you come back and check on people. Make it a point to follow up with them. And it's literally just adding one more follow up in your process. It's literally just adding the same way you were following up with them up until the point. It's just adding one more. What's really interesting about this is I was thinking about the fact that this is something that we talk about inside of wholesale. The same process, leverage it with the relationships in your lives too. That's going to be a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day, but I just want to plant that seed inside some people's minds that you need to be using this process as well with other people. Because like at the beginning, I said sales is service. So Sam, I don't think we're going to have enough time to talk about any other strategies
Yeah,
today.
we spent an hour talking about Sandler Submarine. Okay, guys, 100%. We do not have time. We actually have two more frameworks that we want to cover. One that I think is the more advanced version of it, and we're actually going to be probably SOPing into my portfolio businesses. So I will actively be using. Love Sandler Submarine, but we're not going to be using Sandler Submarine for that specific business. We're actually going to go use the next framework that we have to get us probably through about 2025. And then here's what's cool. The last framework that we're going to go over is going to be my personal favorite one for a ton of different reasons. And it's, in my opinion, out of all the ones that we've gone over, I think that one has actually produced the most money for the most people across the board. And if you were like me and you wanted to develop your skill sets in real estate, right? And guys, Marlon and I are both in agreement on this. If you want to make a ton of money and you want to get filthy rich and you want to make 50 million a year, 100 million a year, you want to be a billionaire, all the things, right? You want to be that person. You are not going to do it wholesaling or flipping houses. Heck, you're not going to even be able to live that lifestyle with just buying rentals. The reality is, if you want to take the skill sets you develop in real estate, which I think is real estate's the best vehicle to develop your skill sets, and you want to go take these skill sets and go and conquer the world of business, which is my entire thing, that final framework is going to be the framework that, in my opinion, is going to take me to several 8 figures over the next 2 years. And so 100%, I can't wait to get to that one, because the next two, period, I think are just freaking amazing. But yeah, dude, we do not have time.
You know what? There is something I wanted to add though, and I'm glad I'm remembering this right now. So, guys, I know we're going a little bit over. I appreciate you all for hanging out and staying here with us. By the way, if you're getting value, do me a favor, drop some fire in the chat, drop some comments in the chat, and make sure you smash that like button. It helps out with the algorithm. One of the
Dude,
things
I don't know if you saw this really quickly. You probably don't know this, but Vault Ventures LLC, that's our previous guest and good friend for both of us. That's Alex Quezada, who's saying he raised $20 million from one of his sellers. And so, guys, and Alex Quezada is a guy who's using these exact same frameworks across the board. Maybe not this exact one, but very much focusing on the fulfillment, the post-sell, the relational aspect of it at the end, to then just go back and do exactly what I talked about, get the private money from them, because they netted it, they have it. And what's Alex doing? Guys, Alex Quezada this year is going to buy $50 million worth of self-storage. Think about that. And I would venture to say $20 million of private money just by focusing on the last 2 buckets of the Sandler Submarine. That's huge. So huge.
And you know what? This is something that I think Alex would agree with. What I'm about to say is, when you guys are going through the submarine, understand, don't rush the process. because you're dealing with people. And sometimes in your desire to make money, to build your business, you start trying to rush the process. And the reality is when you're rushing the process, you're trying to rush people. And people don't take well to being rushed. Take your time with people. So remember that as you go through this, take your time with people. You will naturally develop the skill. You will naturally figure out how to be more efficient with these frameworks, how to speed up the conversation without ever rushing a person. You will naturally figure out how to press the urgency button without rushing an individual. So on that note, guys, you know what you got to do. We don't charge anything for the information that we give here. This is free value every week. We haven't missed a week in 115. However, there are still dues that need to be paid. If you're getting value, I need you to make sure you are hitting the like button. If you're new to the channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button, that you're subscribed to both my channel at Mindset Marlin. You're subscribed to Sam's channel at Arch Sam Singh. And most importantly, you share this value with a friend. I want you to push this out to somebody else who needs the help. That's how you can help another entrepreneur along on their journey. So if you want to pay it forward, that's the way you do it. We'll be back here next week. I don't know if we're going to do the part 2 immediately next week or if we're going to do another episode, but we'll keep you guys updated on that.
Yep.